Audio check. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Good afternoon, everyone. Pardon? Yes, I'm okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the North Somerset Council Executive, our first meeting since the local elections took place and the new partnership administration was formed. Just to remind colleagues that we are obviously streaming this live on YouTube, so just be a little bit careful about what you swear. I nearly said be a bit careful about what you swear. So definitely be a bit careful about what you swear. So just remember that we're streaming live on YouTube. Before we go into the agenda properly, I thought it'd be helpful, because we've obviously got a lot of new members, to just ask my exec colleagues to introduce themselves. So I'll kick off. I'm Councillor Mike Bell. I'm the Lib Dem Councillor for Weston-super-Mare Central and the Leader of Council. And then I'll just go down the line. So Mark.
Good afternoon, I'm Councillor Mark Cannithford. I'm the Executive Member for Spatial Planning, Placemaking and Economy.
Councillor James Clayton, the Executive Member for Safety in the Community.
Councillor Mike Solomon, Executive Member for Culture and Leisure.
I'm Councillor Catherine Gibbons, and I'm the Executive Member for Children's Services, Lifelong Learning and Skills, and I'm Deputy Leader of the Council.
Councillor Hannah Young, Councillor for Clevedon South Ward and Executive Member for Highways and Transport.
I'm Councillor Jenna Homaris. I'm Green Party Councillor for Pill Ward, and I'm the Exec Member for Homes and Health and also Equalities and Diversity.
I'm Annemieke Waite. I'm the Executive Member for Climate, Waste and Sustainability, and I represent the Winford Ward.
Great, thank you very much. Now, we should have been offering this meeting as a hybrid meeting, also on Teams for colleagues to join from across the council, but I think we're having some technical problems with that at the moment, so they may appear and arrive at some point, but just to bear that in mind. But hopefully anyone who was hoping to join on Teams will of course switch to YouTube instead. Before we start the formal agenda of the meeting, I just want to recognise that June is of course Pride Month, and we're pleased to have the flag of celebration in the council chamber today. Pride Month is an important opportunity for people to come together in love and friendship to show how far LGBTQ+ rights have come and how in some places there's still work to be done. As a council, we support all of our communities and stand together with them in acceptance and equality. So we're very pleased to have the flag here in the chamber this afternoon. Okay, so we'll get cracking on the formal part of the agenda. So the first item is addresses by members of the public. I believe there are none. Apologies for absence. I think we've got one apology, which is from Councillor Roger Whitfield. And there are no others because everyone else is here. So that's perfect. Thank you very much. Any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests? Nope. Okay, thank you. So then we need to note the minutes of the meeting that took place on the 8th of February. So I'll move those from the chair, and if someone who was present, thank you, Mark, can second those. So we'll take those as a correct record. Item 5, which is the non-exec councillors' addresses. Again, I think we have none. Great, thank you. Item 7 is item 6 is any matters referred that are not already on the agenda. Again, there are none. Item 7, the West of England sub-region. Again, there are none. So then item 8, the forward plan. So hopefully colleagues have looked at the forward plan. That's just for noting. So unless anyone wants to signal any comments, we'll note that. Thank you. Okay, so the first substantial item is item 9, which is the Adult Social Services Commissioning Intention Strategy. So I'll move the recommendations in the report on behalf of Councillor Roger Whitfield, who is obviously not present, and ask for a seconder. Thank you, Mark. So it's important, this is an important document. Obviously, it covers our commissioning priorities in social care around various contracted activities where the current contracts expire later this year or in 2024. There are a number of commissioning routes to make sure that we deliver value for money and good outcomes, including extensions to existing contracts, a tender process in some cases, and also direct award. So really helpful to get early a sight and overview of where we are with the range of social care services. So I'll leave it at that in terms of the introduction. Gerald, as an officer, do you want to add anything?
No, I think you've covered it, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments from colleagues? Nope. Okay. Would you like to all just indicate you're happy with the recommendations? That's great. Thank you very much. So then we'll move on to item 10, which is the recommissioning of the Integrated Sexual Health Service. So Councillor Homaris, Jenna, to present.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Bell, Chairman. So I think I'll probably talk in a little bit more detail than your introduction for the previous report, just because it took me, as a new member, it took me a little bit of time to get my head around quite a lot of these concepts in the health portfolio, and I still haven't obviously covered absolutely everything, but just to be able to share what I've learned and explain what significance it is. So this is to seek approval for recommissioning of the North Somerset elements of the Bristol North Somerset South Gloucestershire, which is BNSSG, Integrated Sexual Health Services for a period of 10 years. It's part of the work of the BNSSG Integrated Care System. And this is quite a new thing. It was set up in 2022, and it's designed to join up health and care needs together and break down boundaries between physical health, mental health and social care services, between hospitals, GPs and social services and NGOs. So the BNSSG, it's an integrated care system, and it's an area which covers 1 million people, 45,000 people are actually working in the health and care workforce. There are 60,000 volunteers, 20,000 VCSE staff. And just, you know, to get an idea of North Somerset side of it, our population is 200,000 people. Okay, so just very quickly, the contract existing, this is a recommissioning, so the current contract is from 2017 till 2025. It's provided by University Hospitals Weston and Weston NHS Foundation Trust. The service is called Unity Sexual Health Service, and the aim is to promote, improve and protect sexual health for BNSSG population and to reduce inequalities. I think what's really important to note about, you know, the contract and about sexual health, you know, in public health is that, you know, the integrated services provide open access to confidential, non-judgmental services. It includes STIs, HIV prevention, contraception, health education, and prevention and vaccination. It's such an important area of public health, and it's probably the most important lever we have in advancing gender equality. There's also huge health inequalities. There's strong links existing between deprivation and STIs, teenage pregnancy and abortions, and the highest burden is borne by women, men who have sex with men, the trans community, young people, and people from ethnic minority backgrounds. At the same time, there are all sorts of barriers to helping people get the advice and treatment they need, including cultural factors and just being embarrassed, you know, to talk about sex. My 11-year-old is starting sex education this week at school. I don't know who's more embarrassed, me or her, or the teacher, but, you know, it's fine. And I think that's what we've just got to be able to talk about it, and, you know, as a system to be able to disseminate. So more specifically, in a workshop that was organised by our public health team at the beginning of June, I was surprised to learn that sexual health indicators show that we're actually headed downhill. So according to the UK's Health Security Agency, in last year was the highest number of diagnoses of gonorrhea in any 1 year since records began in 1918. And also the highest number of cases of infectious syphilis per year since 1948. And it's the young people, so people aged 15 to 24, who are most likely to be diagnosed by STIs. So if we get sexual health services right, we're investing in promoting gender equality and health equalities, we're improving social outcomes, and we're able to direct a very large long-term contract to improving you know, not just health outcomes, but also climate environment outcomes across a large and diverse population. So the last bit is about funding. The overall funding landscape is quite difficult. Last year, in an LGA report, it showed that the central government has cut £1 billion of funding, or 24%, from sexual health services since 2015. And which is a shame, because sexual health services are an investment in tackling social determinants of health and inequalities. For North Somerset, the contract is about £1.1 million per year, and our public health grant, which is ring-fenced from the council budget, will cover these costs. And I'm also pleased that the climate change and environmental considerations will be part of the process. So hopefully taking into account the Scope 1 emissions, so direct emissions, Scope 2, so indirect emissions, and Scope 3, so more indirect emissions from supply chain in whoever is the successful bidder. So finally, thanks to all the officers, Sam Hayward and Kate Blakely and Becky Keating, and of course Matt Lenny for the report. It's very much a case where I landed at the tail end of months and months and months of engagement and hard work. And it's fantastic to see they have a plan for wide engagement with lots of different groups to test out their service model to make sure we get absolutely what we need for our area. So I propose that we adopt the recommendations in the report, including the administrative points, which is just about following Bristol City Council's procedures for the procurement mechanisms. And that relationship is clearly set out in a collaborative commissioning agreement. So, yeah, so I would be happy with that.
Thanks, Jenna. And do we have a seconder for the recommendations? Thanks, Catherine. Okay, any questions or comments from anyone? No? Great, thank you. So if colleagues could just signal their agreement with the recommendations. Thank you very much. Okay, and we'll move on to item 11, which is the contract award for cyclical and reactive maintenance. And that's Councillor Young. Hannah, please.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Like my colleague next to me, I've arrived as a new councillor, and this piece of work obviously represents a huge amount of work by officers, and I'm also grateful for that today. It's straightforward. I won't say a great deal, but you'll see that the recommendation is to direct award the contract for the Highway Services cyclical and reactive maintenance to North Somerset Environment Company, NSEC, for a term of 7 years. So I would like to propose that we adopt that recommendation. Just very briefly, the council has a legal duty under the Highways Act 1980 to maintain respective sections of the highway network under section 41. And that includes maintaining, managing, and where necessary, improving the network. I think we all know how challenging that is, and how many members of the public on a daily basis are using that network and are keen to see it maintained to the highest standard possible within our budget. At the full council meeting on 8th of November 2022, members who were here previously will remember that the resolution was already made to progress the highway reactive and cyclical maintenance work package via this direct contract award under the relevant regulations. And since then, the team have received a full business case and pricing submission from NSEC, which you can see the detail of in the report. A detailed evaluation took place of that business case and pricing, and you'll see the recommendation that's resulted to go ahead with this contract. A couple of the reasons this is important: obviously we all know how important it is to be able to respond quickly to changes in the roads, to be able to respond to public demand, and this contract was seen to offer the council the best fit and provide an opportunity to allow changes in priorities over the course of the contract, more flexibility to be able to do what the public need of us. The total value of the decision is £16.3 million. That's 2.335 million per annum for the initial 7-year term. The contract will be subject to application of an agreed inflationary mechanism, which reflects the nature of the contract. And although this does reflect a small budget increase, it was the best value for money that the council has been able to obtain. So lastly, in order to allow the sufficient mobilisation time, including purchase of vehicles, machinery and so on, it's really essential that this contract is awarded in June, ready to go in 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. And is there a seconder for the recommendations? Yep, Councillor Solomon, thank you. So any questions or comments from colleagues? Yes, Councillor Solomon, Mike?
I wanted to inquire about the actual depot for this, because that's going to be a key part, I believe, of NSEC being able to take on this contract. If that, I assume, is all being pursued and will be put in place in time.
If the contract's awarded at this point, yes, it will give sufficient time for all of those aspects to be covered. I think officers were due to join us today, but I think because of our technical difficulties may have been unable to. But I'm very happy to provide any further detail that you want on that after the meeting, Councillor Solomon.
I think it's worth noting that we've all just been through a local election cycle where the condition of roads and pavements was a top priority and concern for lots of residents. And whilst this proposed approach isn't a magic wand in terms of making some of those challenges that Hannah spoke about disappear, I think we should really be positive about the fact that we are able to take back control, to use that phrase, of some of our maintenance programmes with much more flexibility and ability to influence the priorities of NSEC as our contractor for some of this work. And I think we all recognise, and it comes through very strongly in the submission that NSEC put forward for this, that being flexible, focusing on quality outcomes in terms of the investment that we are able to put into this cyclical and reactive maintenance programme is really important. So I really welcome the report and thank you, Hannah, for bringing it to us. Yes.
May I just say that the Assistant Director of Place, Gemma Dando, is actually online if we would like to go to the answer to that question.
We can give it a try. Go for it.
Hi.
Gemma.
Hi everyone. So in answer to Mike's question, the cyclical and reactive maintenance is run out of our depot in Sanford Road, and that will be, so there'll be no change to the operational arrangement. So the service will continue to be run out of Sanford Road depot, and instead of it being leased to Milestone, it'll be leased to NSEC instead. So it's not subject. I know what Mike's talking about. He's talking about our needs to consider where we run waste and other services out of and our depot strategy. But for the time being, there's no change to how we're going to run the highways service, and it is out of that Sanford Road depot and will continue to be out of that depot. So hopefully that helps answer the question.
Thanks, Gemma.
Okay, and I'm delighted that we've solved our technical problems and we've got a few colleagues on Teams as well. Okay, if there are no further questions or comments, then can everyone indicate their support for the recommendations, please? Thank you very much. Okay, and we'll move on to item 12, which is the contract award for the Support to Live at Home contract. So again, I'll move the recommendations in Councillor Whitfield's absence. So again, this is really a recontracting of an existing service. We've been through a very strong tendering process to assess the different bids that were put forward. There's been a bit of rationalisation in terms of how the different areas for the Support to Live at Home services are provided, and we've consolidated some of this on the footprint of the One Western area. And the recommendation in the report is to award that contract to Access Your Care Limited. The tender process took place over 3 rounds, I think, and Access Your Care was the highest scoring on all measures, which was really impressive. I think what's also worth noting is that Access Your Care only operate in North Somerset, and actually they've been a relatively new entrant to this market and have grown their ability and their capacity and their experience over time. And so it's really pleasing to see a sort of local homegrown business being able to bid for these sorts of contracts. So I really appreciate all the hard work that Councillor Whitfield and officers have put into moving that forward. So can I have a seconder for the recommendations? Yes, thank you, Councillor Solomon. And Gerald, is there anything that you want to add?
No, I think you've covered it, Chair.
Great stuff, thank you. Any questions or comments on the recommendations or report? Nope. Okay, great. In which case, could colleagues please indicate they're happy with the recommendations? Super, thank you very much. So then we move on to item 13, which is the adoption of the local flood risk management strategy. So that's Annemieke to present. Councillor Waite.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. As the third new councillor speaking this afternoon, I have also had a very steep learning curve in the various areas of my portfolio, but I'm very pleased today to present the local flood risk management strategy. Without defences, roughly a quarter of North Somerset homes are at risk of flooding, making North Somerset, if I am correct, the second most at-risk council with respect to flooding. So having a local flood risk management strategy is not only a statutory requirement, but also a top priority for us as council. The previous strategy was adopted in 2014, which is long before we declared a climate emergency. And in updating the strategy, the team's approach has been to maintain technical and statutory content, but also to make the document more readable. The action plan is in accordance with all national objectives, as well as with an aim to ensure a flood-resilient North Somerset, to make sure that our growth and infrastructure is resilient in tomorrow's climate, and to ensure that North Somerset is ready to respond and adapt to local flooding. The plan is reviewed and updated on a regular basis, and it contains a number of standalone sections that are really useful on a day-to-day basis. Councillors who've been here longer than I have will know that the draft was originally approved in February and was then subject to extensive engagement and consultation, just as outlined in the document that you've all read for today's meeting. The report details the summary of the responses that were received following this consultation, and only minor changes were then made to the draft as a result of this consultation. So, in short, I would really like to thank the officers for their comprehensive briefings prior to this meeting and for their hard work in bringing this strategy to this point of approval. And I'm seeking approval for adoption and delegation to the flood risk team for minor amendments to allow review of action plan each year. Thank you.
Great stuff, thank you. Can I have a seconder for that? Yes, Councillor Caniford. Great. Any questions or comments, please? Nope. Okay, super. In which case, you know the drill. Could you indicate your support for the recommendations? That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Then we'll move on to item 14, which is the electric vehicle strategy. So that's Hannah. Councillor Young, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. So another exciting piece of work, I think, for North Somerset, electric vehicle charging strategy. I was really pleased to see this, and again, it's been the result of a huge amount of work, which I know has involved a number of members, as well as I'd just like to thank the previous executive member, Steve Hogg, for Highways and Transport at that stage, for getting this to the point that it did before I took on the portfolio. I know the work of the electric vehicle strategy group, charging vehicle working group, has also involved, not only members and exec members, but hard work of officers and also industry experts, which has been invaluable. I think we can definitely say that the expertise for the challenges that we face in the future is out there within a whole range of different bodies, and we need to be able to engage with those actively to be able to get the right solutions for people in North Somerset. I'm sure many will know already that 43% of carbon emissions in North Somerset come from transport. If we're going to have any potential to get to net zero by 2030, which is the council's ambition and plan, then we need to look at all sorts of ways in which to decarbonise. Obviously, there's a lot of work on active travel, on cycling and walking, and on public transport by way of buses, but electric vehicles absolutely have an important role to play in transport decarbonisation. So I think it's a really timely strategy and something that is very important for us to put in place for our communities. You'll see from the strategy itself and the modelling that's been undertaken that the challenges that we face in North Somerset are that if we leave electric vehicle charging infrastructure to the private sector, then we know that we won't get full coverage across all of our communities, and some people may be disadvantaged by that, and we may not achieve the best result for the public. So you will see from the report that there's been an approach which has been developed to look at how we can bid for external monies for government funds to be able to improve the charging infrastructure, particularly in areas where it might not be commercially viable for the private sector to develop that for us. And that will enable people across North Somerset, particularly in the rural areas, to be able to access that in future. We know that there is funding that is becoming available, but we need to be able to demonstrate that we have a strategy across North Somerset to be eligible to bid for that funding. So I think this is a huge opportunity for us. I'm really glad that the approach has been taken. I think it's worth saying also a few points in the report. We forecast that the public sector will need to play a role in developing 613 fast and 30 rapid chargers by 2030. That's a huge task. So just as well, we're starting now. And the model that the paper recommends, that the strategy recommends, is one not that the council operate those itself, but that a concessionary model is approached. So even in the areas where it's not necessarily commercially viable to run, to establish and run a charging point, that there is a concession available following the development of the infrastructure through public money. That's all I think I really want to say at this stage. Obviously happy to hear any questions from anyone, but I would ask that we endorse the recommendation to adopt the electric vehicle strategy.
Thank you, Hannah. And can I have a seconder for that? Yep, Councillor Solomon, did you want to speak as well?
Yeah, as an EV owner and having owned an EV over a period of time and seen the challenges that we face in charging them, I think there are a couple of issues we need to be aware of. One is that a lot of the areas where we will need to put, if we do put on-street charging, there will be a need for new substations. It's already happening. I know at Hinkley Point, they are constantly, when they're charging their cars out there at the depot, the chargers are failing again because of power supplies. So it's going to be quite an investment in putting substations in place. I also think that the idea of having a lot of street-based charging stations is not necessarily the direction to go in. I know that Toyota in 24 and by 2030 will have a new battery technology. It's already online that will give 750 miles. They're bigger batteries, so they're slightly heavy. They're first being introduced in 24. So therefore, more people will charge at home. And the way forward, I think, is home charging. Now, the government, unfortunately, took away all subsidies. So I think they need to reintroduce the subsidies so that people can charge at home. And when you've got a realistic 600 or 700 miles of charging, you won't need to use the public chargers as much. Thank you.
That's great, thank you. And then I've got Councillor Bridger, Steve Bridger on Teams. Steve?
Afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Chairman. And thank you, Hannah. Just wanted to raise a very brief point, if I may, which is obviously I support absolutely the adoption of this strategy, but I just wanted to emphasise one of the themes which I think surfaced in the public consultation, which was around the importance, I think, of designating obviously space for EV chargers on the public highway, but not on the pavement. So obviously, I think many councils are installing charging points on pavements, which I think obviously potentially making it harder for people, pedestrians, people walking, wheeling. Obviously, it can compromise mobility for those who are disabled as well. So I think the strategy references some comments around accessibility, but not perhaps explicitly around this issue of obstruction of the footway. So I think I, for one, would like to hear a commitment that we are mindful for as much as possible anyway of protecting pedestrian space. I think that's important. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Steve. So, Hannah.
Yeah, if I could respond to both those points, I agree entirely, Steve, and I'm happy to make a commitment that in the implementation that access issues will be taken absolutely seriously, as I would hope they are in any highway scheme. It's always difficult when there isn't enough space for all of the infrastructure that appears to be required, but obviously I'm sure you'll appreciate this is the strategy, it's not the detailed implementation plan. I would just like to respond to Councillor Solomon's points too. You'll see on page 110 of the report the various options that are available to us in terms of street charging technologies, and I thought it was fantastic to see things like the charging hub that's been installed in Portishead, which is a great example of something that's a really positive service for the people of Portishead in a location where just by the sports centre there, where people will be spending some time, and so it can fit into changing ways of using this technology. I think it's really important to remember that having a home charging point is not an option for large numbers of our communities at this time. Electric vehicles are also expensive, so it may be that those communities are not likely to be the earliest adopters. But as this becomes something which is more common and costs hopefully reduce over time, I think we need to be really mindful that there are very large numbers of people who would not be able to access an in-home charger. And I think, of course, that's part of the solution, but I don't think we should leave all of the solution to those personal, individual decisions.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Go on. I'm going to let you have a second bite of the cherry.
Very quick. What I didn't also point out is the new batteries will charge in 10 minutes. Okay.
Very good. Quicker than this meeting, then. Okay. Thank you very much. So I've got no further questions or comments. So again, could colleagues signify their support for the recommendations? Thank you. Thank you, Hannah. Okay, item 15, which is the approval of the commissioning plan for expansion at Clevedon School. So I think this is down with Catherine and Annamika. Who's going to go for it? Catherine, thank you. Councillor Gibbons.
Okay, yes, I'll kick off, and I can always invite my colleague to comment further. So yes, this is a recommendation before you to go with the commissioning plan for delivering an expansion to the existing buildings at Clevedon School to meet local place needs, and that the capital programme for Clevedon School will be rebased to align with the funding sources. So the funding, as you've read in the papers, has come from a basic need grant that has been paid to children's services by the Department for Education. And that's triggered when our pupil place projection returns, which you submit to them annually, indicate that there's going to be a lack of places in a particular area. And in this case, the allocations are going to be used to expand Clevedon School. I'm sure that in section 3, you will have looked at the detailed feasibility study that took place, and you'll see that the areas that this money will be used to improve will be in the general teaching area, to increase the number of toilets, to create a dedicated drama block, administrative spaces, improve the library provision. And this is all very much in line with our commitment to our young people to provide them with the right start in life, to make sure that they can fulfill their potential and get the right education in the right environment. The school has also been used to, want to create this dance and drama and theatre area, which could also be used for the public outside of school hours, which I think will be a huge bonus to Clevedon. And I'll bow to my colleague here, who's a Clevedon councillor, to express how important that would be for the local area. And the space for the new Performing Arts Centre for public use would be a fantastic addition to the community. We look at the contract structure, which I ask you to endorse, and I won't go into that in detail because the report is extremely detailed, and I have its author present sitting opposite, so I won't steal your thunder, Sally. Again, there's been a consultation that has gone forward, and also this report has been seen by the Children and Young People Scrutiny Panel. So therefore, we've also looked at other options. I think you'll see in section 10 that an option would have been perhaps not to use this on Clevedon School, but to use this money in other areas. However, the allocations of school places saw the council meeting 99.1% of preferences for secondary schools, and Clevedon School is full, and with first preference request on the 1st of March, it's definitely needing the expansion. We had a number of options that were considered. As you will see, option 1 would have been to look at the site and devise an upgrade scheme that rectified spaces throughout the whole school. Option 2 was to build a new classroom block and reconfigure other elements. And option 3 was the one that I'm asking you to endorse here, and that is to build a new arts, music and drama block with areas shown specifically to be deficient and close to end of life, and reuse these spaces as general teaching areas with some reconfiguration with other inadequate areas to be afforded. And obviously we've decided to go with option 3. In terms of our climate emergency commitments, I don't know if Councillor Annemieke Waite wants to comment on our commitments to climate emergency, and you're happy with that? Right. So I don't think I've anything further to add, but then to ask you to support this commissioning plan.
Great, thank you, Catherine. So is there a seconder? Yeah, Councillor Young. Any questions or comments from anyone? I can't... Oh, yes, Councillor Caniford. Mark.
Just a very quick one, and I've been up to school with Sally, and Jim Smith, the headmaster there, is larger than life. He's a tremendous character, has huge ambitions for Clevedon School. Indeed. And it's great to see us supporting him and where we can, because I know it's not easy for either organisation to find funding, but it's a tremendous solution, and I hope you can get that block up very quickly.
Yep, Hannah.
Just to reiterate the point that Councillor Gibbons made in the report, I think this is a fantastic investment in Clevedon. It's one that's much needed in terms of the school, and I think it's a great recognition that working together with the academy and the school and the council, that in partnership we can find solutions to things that not only benefit the young people but also the town. The theatre space issue in Clevedon, we have an amazing theatre scene in Clevedon, in Theatre Shop, and a number of groups that use the community centre, but it's always something that people want to grow, and to have a space like that is an amazing step forward in the town. So I think it's, speaking as a Clevedon person and Clevedon councillor, I just want to reiterate that, and I think it's a great win. Thank you.
Great stuff, thank you very much. So I've got no further questions or comments, so if colleagues could indicate their support for the recommendations. Thank you very much. Okay, and we'll move on to item 16, which is the budget monitoring report for 22-23. So I'm going to move the recommendations, and is someone going to second the recommendations? Thank you, Councillor Caniford. So I think there's a few things that definitely leap out from this report, which I'm sure colleagues will have read. So the first thing is, I think it's worth noting that based on the end of year figures, we've got an underspend of around £400,000, which I think is a great credit to officers at a time of immense pressure on services and costs, and it has to be said, wildly differs from the perception that is painted by some people that local authorities are always running over budget and getting into trouble. And I think when the mood music in local government in general terms is one of financial pressures, and that's still true here as well, by the way. It's absolutely true that we've got financial pressures. It's a great tribute to the professionalism of our staff that we've been able to manage the budget effectively and deliver a modest underspend. Obviously, that masks quite a lot of variation in some of the details, so we will obviously continue to work through some of those issues in this current financial year and going forward as we approach the medium-term financial planning process for future years. I think it's worth noting that particular things that leap out from the report in terms of our continuing challenges are around children's services, where we obviously did have higher costs than we had budgeted for, so particularly around looked after children and children with disabilities. And we know that this is not a new phenomenon and has been a pressure that's been there and growing for many years, and that hasn't gone away. And we also had particular challenges in terms of the home to school transport last year, again with significant cost pressures there as well. And again, that's not a new challenge for us in terms of how we meet those growing costs. But otherwise, I think really strong report, and I appreciate all the hard work and dedication that's gone into both keeping us on track during the year and then finalising these reports for us today. I would really encourage, even if you only read one thing, do have a look at the graph that shows the journey that we were on during 22-23, where we started with a very significant forecast overspend and managed to end the year with that modest underspend, which really shows how hard officers worked in year to contain costs and make sure that we delivered things on budget. I'd particularly also like to say thank you to the adult services team who were able to manage budgets really effectively in 22-23. So please, Gerald, do pass on our thanks to Hayley and the team for all the continued work there, where we know there are significant pressures, but some of the work that we've done to rebase budgets, but also to focus on keeping costs down as much as possible whilst protecting those frontline services really shines through in the report. Okay, Amy, anything that you'd like to add?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, to echo your thoughts around how challenging it's been in 22-23, actually, managing the demand, inflationary and wider economic position we find ourselves in local government. I am comfortable that with the recommendation in the paper, just to top up the General Fund Reserve, that will support the Council's overall financial strategy in terms of meeting our risks. But it is a pretty unrelenting financial situation, particularly with the inflation we face at the moment. So nothing further to add, but thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions or comments from anyone? I can't see any hands. Nope, okay. So if you could indicate your support for the recommendations, please. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll then move us on to item 17, which is the appointments to outside bodies which the executive is responsible for making. So an updated report was circulated with the papers, and I'm aware that there are a couple of outstanding nominations or vacancies that we've still got. Is that correct, Nick?
That's correct, Chair. If you can just supply those when you can, if the others are approved by your colleagues and yourself. And one item, Councillor Burden would not forgive me if I didn't pick up on the internal drainage boards and say we always give the board a problem in an election year when they meet before we make the appointments. So the ask is, could we have those terms of office continuing until the first executive in a new administration?
Okay, that's duly noted, and I would suggest that for the outstanding appointments, if we agree the list as circulated, and then if any final nominations can be confirmed by myself and the Deputy Leader, Councillor Gibbons, and then we needn't bring the matter back to the Executive. So is that okay? Any questions, comments? Yes, Councillor Caniford?
Just one, and I'm not concerned about the answer, but just to look at Visit West Board, we've got down Councillor Solomon. Is that under strategy, or is that under... So it's just, it can be decided at a later date, but just to take under review. Visit West Board in Bristol. Okay. Currently it's been me, it's now you. Yeah. But I don't know whether it comes under the event strategy or the... because it's events and culture and leisure. It's not events, it's... Yeah, so well, culture. Either way, can you just decide on this?
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Comments noted. Okay, I haven't got any other questions or comments on that. So if colleagues could indicate their support for the report. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so that concludes all the formal business. So we're now on to item 18, which is oral reports from exec councillors. So for those colleagues who are new, this is an opportunity to basically raise anything that you want to, but generally speaking, if there's an announcement or an update which we haven't had on the agenda, which you think is relevant to the meeting. So I've got two things that I was going to mention to kick us off. So the first is just to congratulate and wish good luck to Joe Walker, our Chief Executive, who has been shortlisted for Chief Executive of the Year in the Municipal Journal Awards, which is taking place on Friday. I think, I hope that you know, Joe, that we all recognise the enormous contribution that you've made to the council since you came on board, but also that I know that your nomination also reflects the great work that the whole officer team is doing, that you lead. So we're really proud of you and the wider team, and hope you have a great time regardless of what happens. So congratulations on that. And the other thing I was going to say as well, whilst I'm on the subject of saying thank you, can I just thank all the exec members for the energy and enthusiasm that they've shown for their role since being appointed, and particularly say well done to our new members who've been dropped in it with lots of reports and issues to deal with on day one. And it's been really great that you've got to grips with it. And to be honest, I would defy anyone to know that you hadn't been here for years. So really good job. Any other questions, any other comments that any exec members would like to make this afternoon? Catherine?
Just a quick one. I mean, you've highlighted that it's Pride Month, which is great. I just wanted to remind people that it is still Refugee Week. I know that my colleague Jenna has been to drop in at Race Equality North Somerset, and there are a number of other events still going on, but it's just an opportunity perhaps within our communities to think about that, think about some of the Ukrainian families we're still hosting and other groups that are now forming part of North Somerset's wider community, and remember the struggles they've been through to get here and the support we owe them. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Catherine. Okay, so the only other item is urgent business, of which there is none. So at 3:17, I've just missed out, Mike. At 3:17, I'm going to close the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone.